1 minute with Mitch
and Murphy.
Hello again. It's time for a minute with Mitch
and Murphy.
That's right. You see her over there. This is Kara Murphy. This will be a little different this time. We do have a special guest today, Kara Murphy, the Chief Investment Officer at Kestra. Kara's been in the industry a very long time. Now she's decided to really go famous and get on a minute with Mitch because you may have seen her on CNBC, Bloomberg, and many other financial channels on TV, on radio. But she's come over to the Mitch side, so that's good news this time.
That is the good side.
It's very, very good. Kara's been in the industry a long time and is the expert in the financial sector. She's very experienced, knows lots and lots of information. Kara, today we're going to talk a little about a new report that just came out yesterday, which was Tuesday, October 15th. And that is the international inflation. No one's really talked about international inflation for a long, long time. So we're trying to be ahead of the curve to discuss what's happened with them and where we might be leading to in the future. What are some of the numbers that came out? We did see it fall below their target 2%. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so this is particularly in the Eurozone, which tends to, that economy tends to track the U.S. economy pretty closely. As you and I were just talking about, what we've seen over the last couple of years is that the European economy as a whole is a little bit ahead of the U.S. And the numbers that you're talking about that just came out suggested that inflation is actually tracking below the ECB's target. Now, we've also seen growth numbers start to slow there, and I think it can offer a little preview of where the U.S. economy is likely to be in a couple of months.
Yeah, as we know, the Fed in the U.S. just did take their first rate cut last month of 0.5%. And again, we don't know where they're going to go, what the next cuts are going to be. Everybody speculates, but we don't work on speculation. We try to get data and facts. But this does give us a little heads up. While the inflation falls to the 1.8, we talked earlier that their core inflation still is a little higher.
Yeah, and the core inflation versus headline inflation, it's people sometimes don't understand the nuance, but it's important. So headline inflation includes things that move around a lot. So think like oil and food, and we tend to see those prices really bounce around a fair amount. Core tends to be, as you were saying earlier, heavily influenced by services. Think haircuts and getting your pants hemmed and tax returns, something where there's a person attached to it.
Right.
And those prices tend to move much more slowly and harder for the Fed to knock down.
Yeah, and I believe in Europe right now that in August it was at 4.1, in September it dropped to about 4%. But you can see 4% is much higher than the 1.8.
Yeah.
And I think the overall non-core inflation is running about 2.7. But it does give us a good insight to where we think the U.S. is going to be because, as you said earlier, Europe is tending to be a little ahead of us. So what are your thoughts on where we might be in 3 to 6 months?
So I would expect to see inflation continue to decelerate. The Fed has sort of drawn a line in the sand at 2%, saying that we're going to keep at this until inflation gets to 2%. I think actually that inflation will probably settle out a little bit ahead of that. When we look back at history, inflation has tended to run well above 2%. So 2% might actually be too low. So what we'll see is the Fed continuing to cut, I think a little bit more slowly than what many in the market are expecting right now, because they're going to be waiting to make sure that inflation is going to continue to subside.
Right. Well, that's all now for a minute with Mitch and
Murphy.
That's it for now. So anyway, stay tuned for more updates on A Minute with Mitch. Thank you.
1 minute with Mitch
and Murphy.